Thank you, my brother Uhuru, and I sincerely hope that our brothers will join us shortly. But we all know the exigencies of the offices of state, and we hope that they can join us, as I said, and that they will be successful in their deliberations elsewhere. I think, my brother, when we met in Barbados in August of 2019 and first conceptualized this Africa Union CARICOM summit, it was because we know that this is our future and this is where we have to carry our people. Your continent is our ancestral home. And we are related to you, as I just heard from Prime Minister Rowley, in so many ways, because Africa is in us and we're not simply from Africa. But I want not only to dwell on the platform of history, because our history we all know. We know of the great meetings that forged our independence movement, whether it was in the Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945, and be it as it was that we were all colonies, regrettably, at that point, we met in a foreign land. Today, we meet in a virtual space, but reflecting the hearts and minds of Caribbean people and African people. And I ask us today to recognize that the first thing that we must do, above all else, in the words of Robert Nesta Marley, as he immortalized the words of Marcus Messiah Garvey, is to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. The mental slavery that has us seeing north only. The mental slavery that has us trading north only. The mental slavery that has us not recognizing that between ourselves, we constitute 1/3 of the nations of the world. The mental slavery that has prevented direct trade links or direct air transport between Africa and the Caribbean. The mental slavery that has blocked us from reclaiming our Atlantic destiny and forging our future in the image and in the interests of our people. Africa is the youngest continent on the earth. You have 60% of your people under the age of 25. Our Caribbean region continues to be lacking in the numbers of persons to drive development as our people need it and need to have it. And why do I say so? Guyana is the size of the United Kingdom, but has the population of 800,000 as opposed to the United Kingdom's 65 million. The Netherlands is 17 million and smaller than Suriname, but Suriname's population is just over 600,000. Belize is the size of Israel, but has the population that is a dwarf in comparison to Israel's 8 million. Belize around 400,000. And my own Barbados, approximately 20% smaller than Singapore, which took that additional 20% through land reclamation, but its population is 5 million as compared to our 300,000. There is obviously a demographic dividend that Africa will reap, but there is obviously bridges that must be forged in our own deliberate 21st century interests if we are to drive development in CARICOM and in Africa, working cooperatively together. And why do I say so? 76 years ago, when the United Nations and the international financial institutions of the Bretton Woods were formed, we didn't even exist. No one thought of us. Our interests are not protected in the construction or in the constitution of those agencies and institutions. And 76 years later, in spite of us becoming independent nations, we continue to suffer from that lack of equity and lack of fair participation in those institutions, particularly in forging their policy framework and their programs that can support countries like ours that face multiple crises, some of them existential. We face the climate crisis together, recognizing that no longer can the battle be fought on behalf of small island developing states alone, but must now also reflect those countries between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Why? Because regrettably, small island developing states have not been able to motivate the world to save us by telling the world that it cannot move beyond 1.5 degrees because we need an increase limited and capped at 1.5 degrees if we are to survive. The multiple storms and floods, my brother, that you have seen across Africa, and the multiple hurricanes and droughts and sargassum weed that you see across the Caribbean reinforce that we are the victims of that climate crisis that we did not create, that are the victims of the same greed that caused the extraction of wealth from our countries across both sides of the Atlantic in order to enrich those who sought to have a development projection based on that extraction of our wealth and the use of primary commodities to continue to be the basis for them to add value that way exceeds that which we receive for primary commodities. It is up to us to make these changes. We know them well. And we continue not only to face the climate crisis, as I said, we face now jointly the pandemic. And while we fight this current pandemic against the background of vaccine inequity and apartheid, against the absence of global leadership so that we could have found a way to fight the battle against the very variants, we do so conscious that there are other pandemics that are likely to confront us. And indeed, I chair on behalf of the World Health Organization, the One Health Global Initiative, that is fighting against what will come to be regarded as the slow motion pandemic, the battle against antimicrobial resistance, because it is expected to be the biggest killer of our citizens by the year 2050 because of our body's resistance to antibiotics, whether we ingest them as humans or whether we eat them from the food and the meat and vegetables that we eat, or whether they affect our environment because of the impact on runoff. We equally fight the battles of violence, whether violence born or arisen as a result of terrorism or as a result of social implosion because of poverty and lack of development opportunities. And we equally fight the battle, regrettably, of access to concessional financing that is affordable and that is capable of being the platform for our development. Why do I say so? Because at the end of the day, when a country like Ghana and a country like Greece go to the international capital markets, how do we explain them having the same international credit ratings, but Ghana having to borrow at multiple times more than the cost that Greece borrows at, simply because Greece belongs to the European Union and the international financial community values the definition of safe assets, which are within the European Union, in a way that Africa and the Caribbean do not have access to these safe assets. I hope that we will continue to work together to reverse these fortunes. And I'm comforted by the meetings that I had with the African ministers of finance earlier this year and the work of the predecessor in the chair of the Development Committee at the World Bank and the IMF, the Minister of Finance from Ghana, who, like us, recognize that we have to spend the time to do the heavy lifting and to create the definitions that will allow for a level playing field with respect to the cost of borrowing in our region. But these are not the only things that bring us together. The truth is that there are so many other things that have economic value that we have not even started to touch the surface with. We need to be able to visit our countries. Caribbean people want to see Africa, and African people need to see the Caribbean. We need to be able to work together, not just in the interest of a colonial civil service or because people brought us here against our will. We need to do it as a matter of choice and as a matter of economic destiny. We need equally to recognize that our common habits in food, our common likes in food, from yam and cassava to jollof rice to pilau, to the influence of immigrants from other parts of the world, have made our regions rich. And at the very time when much of the developed world spends time in the luxury and leisure of food, our people continue to starve to have access to food as they face hunger on too many fronts. Let us use that very same food to create the economic wealth and prosperity in circumstances where it is not simply exported as raw valueless commodities, but those that have added value to be able to make the benefits accrue to our people. Let us recognize that cricket is a global game, and whether it is in Rwanda or Kenya, that we need to be able to have more people playing cricket. And we in the Caribbean can continue to bring our prowess there to be able to have the benefit of more cricket playing nations out of Africa and the African diaspora. Let us equally recognize that the opportunities of technology have shown that it is possible to leapfrog aspects of our development. We continue to admire Kenya and all of those others who have used the mobile technology to be able to facilitate the bankless and those excluded from financial institutions in our region, and allowing them now to be able to provide for themselves and their families by using technology to be able to access it. But let us equally learn from each other. We in Barbados have for almost the last century found ways of titling land for our people who are in possession of land without title, such that they may convert that possession of land to be able to leverage it in order to improve the quality of their housing and access to machinery to improve the quality of their farming. We can learn from each other. And I trust and pray, my brother, that this summit will not only be, as our brother Gaston has called for it, and our brother, the president of South Africa, has reflected, that it will be an annual summit. But as we go to the very, very, very end of our engagement, let us remember that the only thing that stops us from having a direct air link between Africa and Barbados, Africa and the Caribbean, is the will of those of us who continue not to recognize the importance of unlocking 1.4 billion people who have a common ancestry to be able to work with each other. We thank God that we are, at this point in time, making it together in order to make that defined difference to our people. And it is against that background, I'd like to put on the table, while supporting Gaston's recommendation for an annual summit, to put some other concrete proposals that I believe will make a difference. One, as I said, the establishment of a regular weekly direct airline flight between Africa and CARICOM, even if it means that we may have initially to help subsidize it, because without the vision that is necessary, without the mental emancipation, the unlocking of that 1.4 billion people will not happen. And we cannot justify the AU making CARICOM the 6th diasporic region without seeking now to ensure that the people of both regions can mix with one another and understand why we truly are family. Two, a dedicated and highly empowered public-private sector mechanism that enables the development of the African Caribbean economy, particularly in the areas of digital technology, creative industries, renewable energy, and the life sciences. And separate from that, my dear, all my friends, all of the ability to mobilize our funding in order to be able to ensure that we can finance development, not just of governments, but of companies and individuals in our two regions. Thirdly, the establishment of a joint AU CARICOM electronic mass media platform, or a mechanism that facilitates the exchange of news, information, and artistic programming, sports. Because when our people see each other on a daily basis, they will understand why we must travel and why we must trade. And they will therefore enable those air links and maritime shipping links that we make to become sustainable. Fourthly, a collective commitment to participate in the 22nd of September high-level meeting in the UN General Assembly, week after next, in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the 2001 UN World Conference Against Racism that was held in Durban. And I say so because at that conference, all of the countries of the world, with the exception of a handful of Western countries, agreed that the time had come for us to start to discuss reparations. Since that date, 20 years ago, we've had many things happen, culminating in Black Lives Matter. There is nothing like an idea whose time has come. And I hope that we leave this summit prepared to coordinate a position as we go to the UN to ensure that we now begin to discuss the absence of a development compact when our countries became independent, the extraction of wealth over centuries, and the fact that our future development must rest equally on reparative justice, and if we are to give our people a chance to be able to access the development opportunities that are theirs to have, but have been deprived because of that continuous extraction of wealth over time. As I said earlier, when the UN and major Bretton Woods institutions formed before most of our nations existed, we did not have a chance to be a part of how they were forged and what they focused on. They were simply not created with our existence in mind. As we make up 1/3 of the world's nation states, we must now work together to bring reform to these institutions so that we can unlock the potential to pursue development on behalf of our people. And finally, let us, my brothers and sisters, recognize that in the past, Africans came to the Caribbean because of others, forcibly. Caribbean citizens came to Africa in the early independence years because of the colonial civil service. Let us today, after September 7th, 2021, cut out the middle passage. Let us cut out the middle leg. Let us cut out the middleman. And let us come together and reclaim, each of us, our Atlantic destiny, because it is the best thing for our people. And in claiming the Atlantic destiny, let us forge it in our interests and in our image. As I said earlier, this time, my brothers and sisters, is our time. By choice, our choice, for us and not for anyone else. Thank you, my brother, and I thank the people of Kenya for facilitating this conference. My only regret is that it did not happen in June last year when it was supposed to, and when all of us could have at the end of this hugged each other as brothers and sisters do, knowing that our love and commitment will carry us through. But perhaps the delay of the holding of this conference is the story of our existence. Obstacles upon obstacles, but resilience above resilience to get us to this point. We have started the journey. I pray that others will continue it, for it is absolutely necessary for us, for our people, to do the right thing by them after centuries of exploitation. Thank you, my brother.